high-grade Gafran. Hey again everybody, it's Robert184, Gundam.tk, as he hops into the frame there. The HG Gafran, the number 2 in the series from high-grade Gundam Age, is all completed. You've seen it all. Now it's time to hear all the good and bad things so you can make a decision whether you want to spend the 1200 yen and whether this kit might be right for you. This may seem a little bit backwards because I've got him transformed for the bad. However, the biggest drawback about this guy is just he is incredibly dull in terms of colors. The 2 colors is a real disappointment. You don't expect to see that on Gundam. The clear green piece that I was excited to have on the A-plate does not show through at all just because of the fact that it's recessed far too much. So when you combine the fact that you've got the dull in the 2 colors and that it looks alien, I have to say it doesn't look like something that I've seen in a lot of Gundams. It doesn't look anything like a Zaku or a Leo or any of the other first grunts that you can go back through the Gundam history and see. So in terms of the MS and the lack of colors, this comes across as being visually unappealing in those respects. Now another big thing that bugged me is just the fact that you've got the lack of weapons. You don't have a beam saber even though it says that it should have one. You don't have a colony destroyer even though it's on the cover of the manual and it was used fairly prominently in episode 2. I wonder if those are going to be something that we'll get with a later bad guy pack. There could be more red in one of them and they decide to give you a red colony destroyer or things like that. But you just think that, hey, if you add it, you've got so many few colors in here, adding a little bit of red in 3-4 pieces on the A-plate would not have been impossible. I think the wings look pretty good here when it's all transformed, but unfortunately when it's in its regular form, I think they can tend to get in the way a lot. The big knock against them is just the lack of articulation. You've got these big blue parts on there which look good, however they get in the way of pretty much everything that you're going to try to do with the head when it's transformed like this. And the fact that you've just got it on a single polycap there, it opens up and you've got a pivot point. We're talking 3 points of articulation. If you look at something, you can get a lot of articulation in a small area, as we've seen with, let's say, the high-grade 00 Quanta and its shield. Just think of how many polycaps and the way everything fits together and everything moves. If these wings moved everywhere you wanted them to, when it's transformed like this into flight mode, I think you could have it be all the more impressive, and perhaps it wouldn't be as annoying to get these wing tips forward as the actual skirts, because of the fact that they fell out 5 or 6 times throughout the course of this interview, and they don't want to line up just correctly, and if you move the legs outside of a very standard pose, they're just going to get in the way. So the skirts, even though they do add a lot of color to an otherwise dull lower body, they come across as overly big and not posable. The other thing that I was really disappointed about is as the tail spins into view is the beam rifle. I thought it was really cool that they can throw it over their shoulder or under their arm, and I go back to the high-grade 00 Quanta. How many different places could you move that? You've got quite a few points of articulation. Could they not have added a few more or another extender to just get this able to come forward in a way under the hip in some way that it's actually going to look like a menacing weapon? Because right now you can get it there, but it's just going to be so far back and recessed that you're not going to notice it. And you would never put it under the hip or under the arm instead of over the shoulder, because that one actually comes across as looking really good. Now on to the posability, and one of its biggest knocks is that this has horrible ankles. Every once in a while I've complained about a kit in the past where it's got almost too much articulation. The ankles can do anything. Well, this is the exact opposite. They do nothing. They can pivot forward and back a little bit, but don't expect them to go off to the side. Don't expect them to rock into place to keep up a pose that may not be perfect. They're not going to cooperate. That's not to say you can't do ground poses. It's just you could have done a lot more. For people that are getting used to incredible ankles, and I'm talking about the high-grade 00s, or even just the Age 1 where it seems like you can do pretty much anything, the fact that you can do nothing with this comes across as one of its biggest flaws. Another knock against this is you may notice that there's hardly any lining on there, and it's not that they don't give you channels, it's just that they don't give you very much, and they are certainly not very pronounced. You've got a few chances there on the shoulders, but the wings just come across as being big plasticky pieces. And especially with the Age 1 where you have those little tick marks all over the place, you sort of get used to just using your $2 marker pen or your Real Touch marker or whatever, getting in there and just adding a little bit of detail to something. This is designed to look simple, and the fact that you don't have the lines mean you don't have the choice, unless you want to add your own, to improve on that. And finally, you see that Commander Finn running around. With the way that it's behaved so far in the show, I don't know if it deserves the right to have the same kind of commander antenna on its head that Char does. All they have to do is give you one regular dome piece to put on there, and then you can have the choice of doing one or the other. Now, whenever I listen to myself go through 3, 4, 5 minutes of bad things, I have to wonder, well, why buy the kit in the first place? But no, it's certainly not all negative. If you want to get into the positives, it's all subjective in terms of looks, but this, I have to say, has a very interesting and unique look. I built a lot of Gundams, and they're all pretty much white, the same, and everything about them could be looked at as boring. This comes across as totally unique, and the look and the green eyes, I think that it comes across as effective in the anime, and it looks like the way it does in the anime here. Now, whether you like that design or not is completely up to you, but I do think it's certainly a very interesting addition to your shelf. On to some of the other things, like the fact that you've got the beam Vulcans here on the ball joints. I just expected them to be a solid piece that sticks in there, but the fact that you can actually have them angled and the arms have fairly decent mobility, though it would have been a little bit nice to have more in the wrist, and the hands not be the same left and right. But the fact that you've got that there, it just adds that little bit of he can't be looking down the barrel of a beam rifle per se, unless you get the over the shoulder one just right. But you can get the hands lined up, and the Destiny Gundam, I think, might be a little bit proud. Now, in terms of mobility, I think the arms work well, and I really think the head looks good. I think it looks especially good when it's transformed and you open up those fins, but the fact that you've got the lines, and even though the lines are used in the transformation, you don't have to add a lot of lining because they're sort of built in, but I think it sort of suits the kit. But for me, I think that the look works, and it's something that I wasn't expecting the head to look this good, but on occasion it just strikes me as looking just right. Now the tail itself is a little bit fun. This, in terms of Gundam weapons, what are you going to get? You're going to get 2 gray pieces slapped together, maybe put on a third color for a sight or something like that. With this one, it doesn't come across as having a big weapon until you use its tail properly. And I think it's a lot of fun to pose it over the shoulder. Left shoulder, right shoulder, no problem. You can extend it. It's got these black parts there that sort of look militaristic because they could be ammo packs or things like that. It's got decent points of articulation to get it where you want it to go, in the upper half anyway. But overall, I think that the tail just adds a lot of fun to this already fun and interesting, unique kind of kit. Now, the commander antenna, I said it doesn't deserve to have that because it's not in the ranks of Char, and well, regardless of that, it looks good. Most Gundam kits with an antenna on the front, they look like bad guys. Put on a mono eye, put on an antenna, it's going to look like a bad guy, and this guy does. Now, I think if it didn't have that on there, it would look incredibly dull, whether it's in this form or in its flight mode. The antenna tends to be this focal point of where your eyes go when you're looking at the head. Then you'll notice the green and then the parts going down. Then you look at the rest of the body. No antenna on here. This guy is far too dull. Now, this contradicts something I said earlier, but sometimes it's a positive that you don't need a lot of lining. We're talking about a series here with Gundam Age that's designed to get new fans into the show. A 10-year-old kid in Japan who liked the bad guy picks this up. He's not going to have a $2 lining marker, though they do sell that even in regular department stores and supermarkets. But he doesn't need to use this. It's going to look this good right out of the box as long as he does a decent job of nipping the plastic parts off. And of course, I tidied mine up with just a real touch or lining marker. But the big winner for me is the transformation. It comes across as being easy, it's fun, and because the transformation is not frustrating and it gets it into a position that actually looks pretty good, I didn't think the limbs would work because quite often when you saw it in its flight mode, in the promo shots, they were showing it elevated. Whenever they only show it elevated, that makes you think that it's not going to work with land or table-based poses. But this one did a good job for me. The head is high enough up, the limbs work. You can have them just 3 on the ground, add an action base. I think it sort of takes away from some of it. Would be nice if the wings move more, but they move enough to make the poses look impressive. So the final verdict for me is a little bit tricky just because I usually review lead Gundams, and for me, I'm usually going to say you should buy them if you like lead Gundams. And that's exactly what I'm going to say with this is, it is what it is. If you like alien-looking suits, you will like that. And this is specifically for a certain kind of fan. I, of course, love the lead Gundams. Other people love the lead antagonists. A lot of people like the very grunt suits. Some people like the good guys, the Jims and the Jestas, and the Jagans and everything in between. Other people, I'd imagine there's a bunch of collectors out there who love picking up the first grunt suit of every series. And if you are one of them and you have Zaku 2s and dreamed of having a regular release of the Leo, I still think it's a crime that they didn't, the Gafran is certainly something that you're going to want to pick up. Now, this is the important point. If you judge a series and its bad guys based on its first enemy, I don't know, what would you think of Double O? But to me, it seems a little underwhelming compared to some of the amazing MSs that we saw later in the hands of the enemies. And so when I see the Gafran and I say, okay, it's not all that exciting, it's only going to go up from here because you know that they have to give you something that's iconic enough to catch your eye for the first 2 episodes. But after this, already episode 3, we're going to have a bigger, badder bad guy. A bigger, badder bad guy. And it's only going to go up from there. And especially with 3 generations, they have to keep the designs of the first generation a little bit tame. It was the same thing in Double O before the time skip. So that, especially if you're talking generations in between, the bad guys should be making huge progress, leaps and bounds. This, by the end of 30, 40 years, who knows what they're going to do with it, should look outdated. But in the meantime, I'm happy to have a bad guy. And if you were happy to have grunt suit bad guys, or you like Gundam Age, or you just like first grunts, you might like it there. But otherwise, it may be a kit that you could pass up on. So that's it for me. Gundam Age hasn't been bad for me. I've been enjoying watching it, and stay tuned for my reviews of the anime, and I look forward to buying more mobile suits. Watching it in the anime, seeing it there, and then seeing it brought to life in the form of a 3D model and putting it together is what Gundam is all about. And I'm happy to have this bad guy. So yes, this guy is not completely alone, and I look forward to seeing which bad guys are coming out in the future. But in the end, this is just my opinion, so please let me know with a comment down below. I always say that, and I'm always appreciative to everybody who does, because I know a lot of people enjoy reading the comments. Good or bad? Do you hate this? Do you hate the enemies? What do you think the enemies are? I haven't speculated about that too much, but I look forward to seeing the reveal in the anime and what people have to say. Anyway, everybody, Robert184, Gundam.tk, looking forward to building the Sparrow and the Titus. That's certainly more up my alley, but it was nice to break out of the mold a little bit here. So, see you next time. Lots more good guys, bad guys, master grades, and everything in between coming up. See ya. Alright, can we just get this out of the way? Even if I am an alien, let me tell you, I'm a lot cooler than an onion from Jupiter. Can we agree on that?